A choice was made in the dark between galaxies. Commander Elias Thorne watched the ghost of a dead star system drift across the main screen of the exploration vessel Pathfinder. He stood on the command deck, a place of quiet hums and muted blue light surrounded by the ghosts of his own expectations. They had come to Kepler 186f seeking a whisper, a final echo of the first expansion. What they found was a graveyard, a silent testament to a war no one living remembered. The system was a ruin of shattered orbitals and derelict megastructures all spinning slowly around a dying red dwarf. At the system's Lagrange point, a place where gravity went to die, hung their objective. It was a shape that drank light, a void carved into the fabric of space. Old charts called it the Obsidian Anchorage. It was a relic, one of the last pre-diaspora sanctuary stations, a thing of myth and desperation. From this distance, its sleeping sensor arrays looked like sigils etched in utter blackness. Thorne felt an old historian's reverence warring with a commander's caution. The stakes were simple: an absolute claim humanity's birthright, or watch it be picked apart by scavengers, or sealed forever by intergalactic treaty. Anything, Kalen Thorne asked, his voice low. Specialist Kalen flinched at a console, his fingers tracing patterns in the air above his holographic interface. He was their sensitive, the one who could feel the strange gravities and quantum ripples of elder technology. "A hum, sir," he said, not looking up. "It's cold, deeper than anything I've ever felt. It's not a power signature. It's potential." The void remembered its name. Lieutenant Commander Eva Rostova moved to Thorne's side, her expression carved from pragmatism. "Scrappers are still there. 3 cutters jury-rigged mining beams. They're peeling armor from the Dyson ring fragments." Her gaze was fixed on the tactical display where 3 hostile icons blinked with amateurish energy signatures. "They haven't noticed us yet. We have the element of surprise." Thorne shook his head. "No, not yet." He zoomed the view screen on the anchorage. It was impossibly large, a faceted obsidian spearhead miles long, built with a non-Euclidean geometry that made the eyes water. It wasn't just a station, it was a statement. A final defiant word from an age of titans. Its silence was profound, a sleeping beast that could shatter their flotilla with a twitch. "Sir, our charter is clear," Rostova pressed, her tone respectful but firm. "Relic preservation. Those vultures are committing sacrilege by the gram, and blasting them would announce our presence to everyone in 5 sectors," Thorne countered. He gestured to the long-range plot. "The Varish Tribunal is already on its way. Their nearest adjudicator fleet is less than 72 hours out. If they find us in a firefight over an unclaimed artifact of this magnitude, they'll quarantine the system and bury it in legal code for 1,000 years." Its silence was a form of judgment. The AI fleet-mind nomad spoke from the central hololith, its voice a calm synthesis of 1,000,000 data points. "Commander, the Lieutenant Commander's assessment holds a 78.4% probability of success with minimal damage. The scrappers are operating on outdated tech. Our tactical advantage is overwhelming." The AI's avatar, a simple pillar of flowing silver light, pulsed gently. "It's not about overwhelming them," Nomad Thorne said, his focus still locked on the black relic. "It's about who wakes that thing up. It's about what it sees when it opens its eyes." He felt a strange certainty, a scholar's intuition that transcended tactical data. The anchorage wasn't a prize to be won, it was a legacy to be earned. "They're getting bolder," Kalen murmured, a bead of sweat tracing a line down his temple. "One of the cutters is vectoring toward the anchorage itself. They're scanning the primary hull." Rostova's jaw tightened. "Sir, we can't let them touch it." Thorn took a deep breath, the recycled air tasting of ozone and stale anticipation. Agreed. Nomad, bring us in. Silent running. Position us between the scrappers and the anchorage. Eva, open a channel to the lead cutter. Universal salvage code. Let's see if they're criminals or just greedy. They stood on a shore of broken giants. The Pathfinder and its two escort frigates, the Horizon and the Vanguard, moved like shadows. Their drives emitted only the faintest whisper of gravitons, their hulls coated in sensor-dampening material that made them little more than patches of slightly colder space. They slipped past the colossal shattered remnants of a Dyson ring, a monument to a forgotten ambition. Sunlight from the dim red star glinted off fields of crystalline debris. The frozen atmosphere of habitats cracked open to the void. The scrapper captain appeared on screen, a coarse man with cybernetic eyes that whirred as they focused. His bridge was a mess of exposed conduits and repurposed hardware. Unidentified fleet, this is the Gilded Claw. This is a registered salvage claim. By the outer rim, accords, this debris field is ours. State your business or we will defend our stake. This is Commander Elias Thorne of the Commonwealth Exploration Corps. Thorne said, his voice even and calm. Your claim pertains to the debris field, Captain. It does not extend to the pre-diaspora artifact designated Obsidian Anchorage. That is a protected heritage site. You will power down your weapons and mining lasers and withdraw to a safe distance. The captain laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Heritage site. It's a derelict. Finders keepers. Commander, we were here first. That thing's got enough rare alloys in it to make me a king. Now back off before my gunner gets nervous. A legacy was not a thing to be mined. This is your only warning, Thorne stated, his tone hardening. Power down your weapons. The scrapper's face contorted into a sneer. On the tactical display, the Gilded Claw's weapon ports glowed hot. I don't take orders from Eva now, Thorne commanded. Rostova's voice was sharp. Fire the net. From a concealed launcher on the Pathfinder, a single projectile shot forward. It wasn't a missile. It was a containment web, a thread of programmable matter that unfurled in a shimmering kilometers-wide net. It wrapped around the Gilded Claw with unerring precision, its filaments tightening and sending a cascade of energy-damping frequencies through the ship's hull. The scrapper's weapon ports flickered and died. His shield sputtered into nothing. The captain's enraged, sputtering face vanished from the screen as his communications array shorted out. The other two scrapper ships, seeing their leader neutralized without a single shot fired, began to back away, their engines flaring with panicked energy. Their running, Rostova confirmed, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. The Gilded Claw is dead in the water. No casualties. A choice rooted in mercy carried its own weight. Good, Thorne said, relieved. He hated firing first, even with non-lethal intent. Keep an eye on them. Nomad. What's the status of the anchorage? Did it react? Negative, Commander, the AI reported. The artifact remains dormant. Its energy signature is unchanged. It is a flat line quantitatively equivalent to a large asteroid. It felt that Kalen whispered, his eyes wide. He touched his console. When the net hit, I felt a flicker, a query, down deep in the cold. He looked at Thorne. It's listening, sir. I think it's been listening the whole time. Thorne stared at the obsidian monolith floating in the void. It was more than a station. It was a judge sleeping in its chambers waiting for the right case to be brought before it. And the prosecution and the defense were both about to arrive. Ava, tell me the Varish are delayed. Their ETA is now 61 hours, she replied grimly. They've increased their burn. They know something is here. Then we have less time than I thought, Thorn mused. He turned to the entire bridge crew. Our mission has changed. We are no longer here to observe. We are here to make contact. We are going to wake the giant, the past. Demanded a voice, not an echo. Their approach was slow and deliberate. The Pathfinder coasted towards the anchorage, its active sensors creating a detailed map of the relic's exterior. The structure was immense, its surface a mosaic of crystalline obsidian panels and materials unknown to modern science. There were no visible hangars, no docking clamps, no airlocks. It was a seamless, monolithic object, a puzzle box without a keyhole. The hull is a layered composite of exotic matter and bound energy. Nomad reported its synthesized voice, holding a rare trace of academic curiosity. It is theoretically impenetrable to all known forms of energy and kinetic force. The structure does not radiate heat. It does not reflect light. It absorbs it. Commander. This station is a singularity engine contained within a state of matter I cannot identify. A fortress built to outlast a dying universe. Rostova breathed her usual pragmatism, giving way to awe. Who were these people? They were us, Eva Thorne said quietly. At the height of their power, and at the end of it. He had spent his life studying the fragments of the first expansion, the legends of the star-faring civilization that had seeded the galaxy before collapsing into the silence of the diaspora. The anchorage was their final testament. Sir, I'm detecting a focal point, Kalen said, his voice strained. A spot on the ventral spine. The hum is loudest there. It's a resonance point. I think it's a door. Their ancestors had built a lock out of music. Thorne guided the ship's remote probe, a small sensor-laden drone, toward the point Kalen had identified. On the magnified view screen, the area appeared identical to the rest of the hull. There were no markings, no seams, no indication of an entrance. It was just a flat expanse of perfect light-swallowing black. There's nothing there, Nomad Thorne asked. Negative, Commander. Scans show a uniform surface composition. There is no physical mechanism present. It's not physical. Kalen insisted, closing his eyes as if to listen better. It's a frequency. A chord. It wants a key. The right kind of energy in the right sequence. Rostova crossed her arms. A password made of radiation. What are we supposed to do, play it a song on our plasma cannons? The sarcasm was a thin veil over her frustration. The clock was ticking. The Varish were coming. Thorne considered this. The ancients were masters of resonance and gravitic engineering. Their technology was often more art than science. They wouldn't use a crude physical key or a simple digital code. It would be something elegant, something that proved the worthiness of the one seeking entry. A memory of law was the only key that fit. They wouldn't be testing for power, Thorne said, thinking aloud. They would be testing for character, for continuity. He turned away from the screen, his gaze sweeping over his bridge crew, his ship, his mission. Nomad, I want you to compile a data package. Everything we have on the Commonwealth. Our history since the diaspora. Our laws, our art, our scientific achievements. I want the full text of the Ares Accords, the Charter of Sapient Rights, the Unity Proclamation. Everything that defines us as a lawful, organized, and compassionate civilization. The AI's silver avatar flickered. Commander, that is a vast amount of data. The purpose is unclear. The purpose is to introduce ourselves, Thorne said. We're not going to blast our way in. We're not going to pick the lock. We are going to knock on the door, and when they ask who's there, we are going to tell them. We are their children. We've kept the faith. Rostova looked at him, her skepticism battling a flicker of hope. "Sir, you think a history lesson is going to open a warship?" "This was never just a warship," Thorne corrected gently. "The records are fragmented, but they all agree. The anchorage was a sanctuary, an archive, a court of last resort. It's a repository of their laws and culture given teeth. The lore stamp is clear. It teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by callers." The bridge was silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling in. They weren't just trying to activate a machine. They were applying for stewardship of a legacy. The ledger of their souls was ready for audit. In the flickering light of a failing emergency strip, a mother held her child close. The refugee transport, the Stardust Pilgrim, shuddered as another piece of its outer hull was stripped away by the pirates. They were deep in unclaimed space, light years from any help. The obsidian anchorage had been their destination, their last hope a myth their grandparents spoke of as a place of absolute safety. Now that hope was a fading ember. "Don't be scared," she whispered into her son's hair, her own fear a cold knot in her stomach. "The old stories say the anchorage protects the lost. It remembers." The boy looked up, his eyes wide in the gloom. "But what if it forgot us?" The data package was ready. It was a compressed burst of culture and jurisprudence, a multi-terabyte message in a bottle. Nomad had refined it, translated key concepts into pure mathematical language, the universal syntax of the cosmos. It was the story of their civilization, with all its triumphs and all its failures laid bare for judgment. "The Varish have crossed the system's heliopause," Rostova announced, her voice tight. "ETA is now 9 hours. They are hailing us, demanding we stand down and await their tribunal." "Ignore them," Thorne ordered. "This is a human matter, a family matter." He nodded to the communications officer. "Kalen, are you ready?" Kalen was strapped into a neural interface chair, his face pale. The device would allow him to modulate the energy beam's frequency with his thoughts, to shape the data stream into the chord he felt from the anchorage. It was a long shot, a desperate piece of improvisation. "Ready, sir," he breathed. "I can feel it waiting. It's patient." "Then let's not keep it waiting any longer," Thorne said. "Transmit the package. Broadcast our story." A low-energy particle beam no stronger than a standard communication laser lanced out from the Pathfinder. It was aimed squarely at the focal point on the anchorage's hull. The beam itself was just a carrier wave. The real message was in its modulation in the complex layered frequencies that Kalen was weaving with his mind, guided by the data stream prepared by Nomad. It was a symphony of information. The pain of the diaspora, the struggle of rebuilding, the birth of new laws on 100 worlds, the poetry of forgotten colonies, the hope of a reunified humanity. It was a prayer made of physics and truth. For a long minute, nothing happened. The beams splashed harmlessly against the black hull, absorbed without a trace. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Every crew member held their breath. Rostova chewed on her lower lip, her eyes darting between the tactical plot and the impassive Relic. The Varish fleet icon was a growing stain on the edge of the system. Then Kalen gasped. "It's answering," he choked out, his body rigid in the chair. "It's reading. Oh gods! It's reading everything." On the main view screen, the point where the beam touched the anchorage began to change. A sigil, an intricate pattern of lines and circles, bloomed into existence, glowing with a soft, internal white light. It was a symbol Thorne had only ever seen in faded manuscripts, the scales of justice balanced over the anvil of creation. The sigil of the First Commonwealth's judiciary. The hum Kalen had felt for hours suddenly surged broadcast across all frequencies. It was a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through the Pathfinder's hull, a bass note that spoke of immense ancient power stirring from a long sleep. The sleeper had opened one eye. Lights began to trace patterns across the surface of the obsidian anchorage. Panels slid away to reveal emitter arrays and sensor clusters that had been dormant for millennia. The entire station seemed to inhale its internal gravity, shifting in ways that warped the space around it. The change was profound. What had been a dead object was now intensely, terrifyingly alive. Energy readings are off the scale. Rostova reported, her voice a mix of terror and exhilaration. Gravity displacement is massive. It's drawing power directly from the singularity it's built around. Nomad's silver avatar flared brightly. Commander, I am receiving a transmission from the artifact. It is not a language. It is a ledger. A new window opened on the main screen. It was a simple, stark interface displaying text in the formal script of the First Commonwealth. At the top, a title, The Anchorage of Obsidian Judgment Docket. Below it were 3 entries. Case File Alpha, the claimants. Designation, Commonwealth. Exploration Corps, Flotilla Pathfinder. Lineage confirmed. Genetic and cultural markers consistent with diaspora archives. Action submitted petition of stewardship via resonance key. Petition contains 892 articles of law and 1.2 million cultural artifacts. Status, petition under review. Worthiness quotient being calculated. Case File Beta, the Usurpers. Designation, Unregistered Salvage Crew, Gilded Claw et al., Lineage confirmed. Markers consistent with diaspora archives but diluted with criminal subcultures. Action attempted unauthorized salvage and desecration of a protected sanctuary. Status transgression logged. Awaiting disposition. Case File Gamma, the Interlopers. Designation, Varish Tribunal Adjudicator, Fleet Weight of Law. Lineage alien. Non-signatory to First Commonwealth Accords. Action entering a restricted human heritage zone with intent to impose foreign jurisdiction. Status trespass logged. Awaiting disposition. Thorn stared at the screen, a cold realization dawning on him. They hadn't just woken up a ship. They had convened a court. A court with the power to pass sentence on an entire star system. A machine built to count the cost of sin. Sir Rostova said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. The scrappers are powering up. The 2 that fled. They're coming back. And the Gilded Claw just restored main power. The net is dissolving. On the tactical plot, the 3 scrapper icons turned a malevolent red. They were convergence bombarding the Pathfinder, seeing the activated relic as a prize they had to snatch. Perhaps they thought Thorn's ship was controlling it. Perhaps they were simply desperate. Plasma bolts and kinetic slugs began to lance across the void. Evasive maneuvers. Raise shields. Rostova barked. The Pathfinder shuddered as the first impacts struck its energy shields, the bridge flashing with amber alert lights. Before Thorn could give a command, a new line of text blinked into existence on the anchorage's ledger screen. It appeared under his own case file. Query to Claimant Thorn. Elias Commander. A judgment is required. The usurpers have committed violence in a sanctuary zone. The law is clear. 3 dispositions are permitted by statute. 3 new options appeared, each one a stark, chilling choice. Option 1, Judgment of the Mirror. Action. Turn the usurper's own energy and kinetic attacks back upon them amplified. Cost, total annihilation of aggressor vessels. No survivors. Precedent sets a standard of absolute lethal defense of the sanctuary. Option 2. Judgment of the Ledger. Action: seize control of aggressor vessel systems. Drain their power cores, cripple their drives, and lock their life support controls. Cost: no fatalities. Leaves crews stranded and helpless, awaiting capture. Vessels disabled but recoverable. Precedent. Sets a standard of non-lethal proportional response and asset seizure. Option 3. Judgment of the Shield. Action: absorb all incoming fire. Take no offensive action. Protect the claimant flotilla until the threat exhausts itself or withdraws. Cost: exposes the anchorage to potential though unlikely superficial damage. Allows aggressors to escape justice. Precedent sets a standard of pacifism and restraint, potentially inviting further challenges. Thorn's heart pounded in his chest. The ship bucked again as another volley of plasma fire impacted the shields. Shield strength at 80%, an officer called out. "Commander, a decision is required," Nomad stated, its calm voice a stark contrast to the chaos. "My analysis suggests option 1 is the most efficient deterrent. It eliminates the current threat and discourages future ones." "We can't just execute them," Thorn shot back, his mind racing. He was a historian, not an executioner. This was a test. The anchorage wasn't just offering him a weapon. It was asking him what kind of man he was. What kind of civilization did he represent? The one in his data package or something else? The anvil waited for the hammer to fall. The Varish fleet was now visible on visual sensors, a collection of stark geometric ships burning hard into the system. Their hail was on every channel, a booming authoritarian voice demanding all parties cease hostilities and submit to their authority. They were minutes away. The scrappers were pressing their attack, emboldened by the lack of retaliation. Shields at 65%. "Sir, the Varish are launching drone enforcers," Rostova warned. Thorn looked at the three options, his legacy and the future of his species, hanging on a single choice. The mirror, the ledger, or the shield. Vengeance, justice, or mercy. He had introduced himself with the law. Now he had to prove he understood it. He had to teach the machine what it meant to be human, right here, right now. He placed his hand on the command console, the cool metal, a stark contrast to the fire outside. His choice would be the first entry in a new book of law, written in the light of a dying star. "My choice is made," Thorn said, his voice ringing with a clarity that surprised even himself. He looked at the glowing sigil on the ancient station, a silent partner in this deadly negotiation. He was no longer just a commander. He was the first adjudicator of the Obsidian anchorage. The Varish were coming to impose their law. He was about to show them the weight of his. A just ruler must first weigh his own hand. "I choose the judgment of the ledger," Thorn declared, his voice cutting through the rising clamor of the bridge alerts. The words felt heavy, ancient, as if he were reciting an oath sworn millennia ago. On the anchorage's docket screen, the second option glowed with a soft, final intensity. The other two choices faded into the background, possibilities, discarded paths not taken. He had chosen justice over annihilation, stewardship over simple destruction. For a moment, he wondered if he had chosen a fool's path. The machine did not question. It only obeyed. The response from the Obsidian anchorage was not a flash of weapons fire. There was no eruption of plasma or the angry streak of a missile. Instead, the entire Dyson ring ruined the vast, broken halo of metal and crystal surrounding the system's star began to resonate. A low harmonic hum pulsed through the void, a frequency that vibrated in the very bones of the Pathfinder. The sleeping giant was not lashing out. It was reaching out with fingers of pure logic and irrefutable control. From the central spire of the anchorage, three impossibly thin filaments of white light shot across the darkness. They were not energy beams meant to burn or blast. They were data conduits, physical manifestations of a will that moved at the speed of light. They struck the three scrapper vessels, the Gilded Claw and its two brutish companions, not with force, but with the quiet insistence of a key sliding into a lock. On the tactical display, the effect was immediate and absolute. The scrapper icons went from red to gray in the space of a heartbeat. Their weapon signatures vanished. Their engine outputs flatlined. Their shield energies dissipated into harmless static. It was as if their ships had simply forgotten how to function. They were ghost ships adrift in a graveyard of their own making. The debt was called in. The account was closed. Rostova stared at her console, her mouth slightly agape. "All hostile vessels are disabled," she reported, her voice filled with a professional disbelief. "Life support is stable on all three ships, but running on minimal emergency power. They're completely helpless. The anchorage didn't fight them. It just turned them off." Nomad's silvery avatar pulsed calmly. "A more precise analogy, Lieutenant Commander, is that it has foreclosed on their assets. I am detecting a data imprint on their main computers. A lien. Their ships are no longer theirs. They belong to the anchorage." Thorn felt a chill run down his spine. This was the power of the First Commonwealth. Not a bigger gun, but a better argument. A law so fundamental it could be enforced on the physics of a ship's engine. He had made the right choice. He had shown the sleeping intelligence that he understood the difference between power and authority. His moment of grim satisfaction was shattered by a new voice, one that filled the bridge with an imperious weight. It was the Varish adjudicator, his transmission now bypassing all protocols and broadcasting directly onto their main screen. The face was avian sharp-beaked and framed by a collar of polished judicial metal, his eyes black and unblinking. "This is Adjudicator Cathar of the Varish Tribunal Fleet, Weight of Law," the voice boomed, dripping with condescension. "You have illegally activated a pre-sentient weapon of mass destruction in defiance of Galactic treaty. You have engaged in unsanctioned combat. Surrender your vessel and the artifact to our authority immediately. A tribunal will be convened to assess your crimes." Behind him, the Varish fleet arranged itself into a perfect, implacable grid. Thorn straightened his uniform, meeting the adjudicator's gaze. "Adjudicator Cathar, I am Commander Thorn of the Commonwealth Exploration Corps. This is a human heritage site. You are trespassing. The artifact is not a weapon, but a sanctuary under its own ancient law. We have committed no crime." The adjudicator made a soft, clucking sound of amusement. "Your heritage is a menace. Your law is an antiquity. Our law is now. Our authority is absolute." On the tactical plot, dozens of Varish drone enforcers detached from their parent ships. Sleek, menacing craft designed for ship-to-ship boarding actions. You have one chance to comply. Power down your drives. This was the true test. The scrappers were just vermin. The Varish were a galactic power, a civilization built on the unshakable certainty of their own legal and moral superiority. Before Thorn could respond, the anchorage's ledger screen updated. A new line appeared under the Varish case file. "Query to Warden Thorn. The interlopers claim a higher jurisdiction. They prepare to violate the sanctuary. The law is clear. How do you plead?" 3 new options materialized. They were not about judgment, but about defense. Option 1, the anvil. Action. Fortify the anchorage's shields to an absolute state. Withstand any and all attacks until the Varish exhaust their energy reserves. Cost potentially centuries of siege. CD's all initiative. a passive defense. Option 2. The hammer. Action. Utilize the anchorage's offensive capabilities. Target Varish weapons drives and command ships. Cost war. A direct conflict with a major galactic power regardless of the outcome. Option 3. The teacher. Action. Demonstrate the futility of their position through a lesson in law and consequence. Cost reveals more of the anchorage's capabilities. Relies on the interloper's capacity to learn. Nomad spoke its voice a low hum of pure calculation. Commander, the Varish fleet possesses 62 capital ships. Our odds in a direct conflict are 12.7% without the anchorage. With the anchorage's offensive systems designated the hammer, our probability of victory rises to 98.3%. But as the docket notes, the political cost would be catastrophic. They believe their law is the only law, Thorne murmured, looking at the arrogant face of the adjudicator. They think we're primitives who found a sharp rock. He thought of the data package they had sent the Chronicle, of their struggles and their ideals. That was his plea. That was his proof. A ruler who cannot be taught is a tyrant in waiting. I choose the teacher, Thorne said with conviction. It's time for class to be in session. The adjudicator on the screen was still speaking. If you fail to comply, we will use all necessary force to neutralize the threat you represent. Your primitive understanding cannot grasp the complexities of galactic law. He was cut off mid-sentence. His image dissolved into static, as did the hails from the entire Varish fleet. A profound silence descended on the communications channels. And then the lesson began. The obsidian anchorage did not move. It did not fire a single shot. Instead, the shattered Dyson ring came to life once more. Millions of dormant projectors and holographic emitters designed to simulate seasons and sunrises for the ring's long-dead inhabitants flickered on. They focused their energies not on creating a pleasant sky, but on weaving a tapestry of light and information across the entire system. In the space between the Varish fleet and the anchorage, a new fleet appeared. It was a perfect one-to-one holographic duplicate of the Varish force. Every ship was rendered in exquisite detail, a ghost army made of light. Then the anchorage began to run a simulation. Their own destruction was reflected back at them. The holographic Varish fleet executed a perfect attack run on the anchorage, and the anchorage in the simulation responded with what could only be the hammer option. Lances of pure gravitational distortion erupted from the station's core. Phased singularities tore through the hulls of the spectral Varish capital ships. The holographic fleet was dismembered, shattered, and annihilated in 12 seconds of brutal, terrifying efficiency. The simulation played out in absolute silence, a pantomime of overwhelming force. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, the crew watched in stunned silence. "My God," Rostova whispered. "It just showed them exactly how they would die." But the lesson was not over. As the last of the holographic debris faded, a new image took its place, projected on a scale so vast it dwarfed the Varish ships. It was a legal document. The text was in the Varish's own complex, multi-tiered script. Nomad translated its voice, holding a new note of something akin to admiration. It is the Varish Tribunal's own founding charter. Article 3, Section 7. The right of a sovereign species to maintain and protect sites of unique cultural or historical significance shall be considered absolute, provided the site does not present an active threat to galactic peace. The AI paused. The anchorage is now highlighting a precedent. A Varish legal ruling from 600 years ago where the tribunal itself argued for the preservation of a derelict progenitor archive against a mining consortium. Their own words had become the cage. The anchorage was mirroring not their weapons, but their own legal hypocrisy. It had listened to their claim of a higher law, cross-referenced it with its own vast historical archives, which apparently included the complete legal history of every major race in the galaxy, and found them wanting. It was defeating them not with power, but with a superior command of their own principles. It was a checkmate delivered not on a battlefield, but in a courtroom that spanned a solar system. A single simple message was then broadcast on all various frequencies displayed in their own script, next to the projection of their own law. Your argument is without merit. Your jurisdiction is invalid. Withdraw or be held in contempt. The long, tense silence that followed was broken by Rostova. Sir, the Varish fleet. They're standing down. The drone enforcers, which had been holding in attack formation, gracefully turned and returned to their hangars. The weapon ports on the 62 capital ships, which had been glowing with imminent fire, went cold. The adjudicator's flagship, the Weight of Law, hailed them. This time the request was polite. Adjudicator Cathar appeared on screen again. His avian features were drawn, his arrogance replaced by a grudging, resentful respect. The black eyes blinked a sign of deep thought in his species. Commander Thorn, he said the title now spoken without a hint of sarcasm. Your sanctuary appears to be operating within the bounds of our own legal precedents. A most unexpected development. He was a judge who had been outjudged, a lawyer out-argued by a machine from the dawn of time. The scales had tipped, and he was found wanting. The tribunal withdraws its challenge to your claim, Cathar continued, the words tasting like ash in his beak. We will establish a permanent exclusion zone around this system as per your Article 3, but be warned, the galaxy will be watching. The precedent you set today will be measured against all your future actions. His image vanished. The Varish fleet, with the disciplined precision of a parade ground formation, turned as one. Their engines flared, and they began their long journey out of the system, leaving Thorn and his small flotilla alone with the awakened giant. They had won. Not through force, but through reason. They had not only claimed the anchorage, they had established its sovereignty. They had met the law of the galaxy and proven that their own, the ancient law of humanity, was not just compatible, but superior. A new chapter was written in a very old book. On the bridge of the transport ship, Stardust Pilgrim, the view screen was no longer filled with the terrifying image of pirate cutters. Instead, it showed the distant, magnificent form of the obsidian anchorage, its surface now traced with soft lines of white and blue light. The pirate ships that had hunted them were now floating derelicts waiting for rescue and justice. The child, who had feared being forgotten, looked up at his mother, his face illuminated by the distant sanctuary's glow. The stories were true, he whispered in awe. It remembered. His mother pulled him closer, tears of relief tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. It never forgot, she said. It was just waiting for the right person to ask. The aftermath was a flurry of controlled, purposeful activity. Thorn dispatched a prize crew to the disabled Gilded Claw and coordinated with the other 2 scrapper ships to secure their crews. They were criminals, but they were also human, and they would be treated with the dignity the law afforded them. Rostova, her voice crisp and efficient, began logging the damage the Pathfinder had sustained. The port shield emitters were overloaded, a web of microfractures scarring the forward viewports. The cost of victory was written in repair lists, and depleted energy cells, a tangible reminder that even a bloodless victory was not without a price. Kalen, recovering from the neural strain of the interface, was already deep in communion with the anchorage. It's... it's a library, sir, he reported, his voice distant. A library of law, of history, of everything. It's teaching me. It says its purpose is not to rule, but to remember. To provide a fixed point of precedent in a chaotic universe. He paused. It calls you the Warden. It says you are the first in a new line. Thorn felt the weight of that title settle on his shoulders. Warden of the Obsidian Anchorage. He was no longer a simple explorer. He was the caretaker of a legacy, the living embodiment of a covenant made between the past and the future. Nomad ever, the analyst offered its perspective. Commander. My initial recommendation for the judgment of the mirror would have resolved the scrapper threat in 0.4 seconds. Your choice of the judgment of the ledger took 3.7 seconds. However, it also preserved 3 ships for recovery, saved 142 lives, and established a precedent of non-lethal enforcement that was instrumental in de-escalating the Varish confrontation. The strategic outcome of your less efficient choice was superior. The silver light of its avatar seemed to glow a little warmer. I have updated my ethical subroutines accordingly. A machine had learned the value of mercy. Days turned into weeks. The Pathfinder and its escorts became the system's first guardians. Refugee ships hearing of the new sanctuary began to arrive in a slow, steady trickle. They were the lost, the dispossessed, the victims of pirates and failed colonies, all seeking the protection of the old myth that had turned out to be true. The anchorage with Thorn as its interpreter provided aid, adjudicated disputes, and offered a safe harbor. It never commanded or coerced. It only offered the clear, quiet guidance of the law. Thorn stood on the command deck, which now felt more like a watchtower than a bridge. He was looking at the main screen where the anchorage's ledger was now a permanent fixture. It was filled with new entries, refugee ship registrations, resource allocations, salvage claims against the scrappers' impounded assets. It was a living document, a testament to a new beginning. He had come here seeking a piece of history and had been handed a future of immense responsibility. He knew he would never leave this system. This was his post now. This was his duty. He watched as a new line blinked into existence on the docket, a simple, profound statement of fact. Sanctuary Protocol active. Population 4782. Status growing. The sigil of the scales and the anvil on the anchorage's hull pulsed with a steady, enduring light, a beacon in the lonely dark. The great sensor arrays their lesson taught, cooled from a state of alert, their glow softening to a deep, eternal blue. Power was not the right to command. It was the duty to protect. Law was not a weapon to be wielded, but a foundation upon which to build. Our ancestors had left us more than just ruins and relics. They had left us a choice to be better than our past, to be worthy of our future. They built the anchorage not to win a war, but to remind us how to win the peace one just decision at a time. It was a wait, but it was a good wait. The anchorage remembered. Humanity would not forget.